I wore my nicest sundress the day I met Veronica. My hands shook slightly as I rang the doorbell of the large brick house, holding a plate of homemade chocolate chip cookies I'd baked that morning. I wanted everything to be perfect. The door swung open, and before I could introduce myself, Veronica pulled Evan into her arms. She held him tight, kissing his cheek repeatedly while stroking his hair like he was still a little boy. He didn't pull away, just stood there accepting her affection with a small smile. Finally, she released him and turned to look at me. Her eyes traveled slowly from my face down to my shoes and back up again. The warmth she'd shown Evan vanished completely. Her expression became cold, assessing, like I was something unpleasant she'd found tracked into her house. "So this is the woman taking my son from me," she said. Not a joke, not playful, just flat, cold statement. I laughed nervously, my voice too high. Not taking him, Mrs. Harrison, just loving him. She didn't smile, didn't soften, just kept staring at me with eyes like ice chips. I looked at Evan desperately, waiting for him to say something, to ease the tension, to tell his mother she was being unwelcoming. He avoided my eyes and cleared his throat awkwardly. That seed of fear planted itself deep in my chest that day. Over the following months, Veronica began establishing what she called boundaries for our relationship. She delivered them casually during family dinners, her voice sweet but her words carrying unmistakable weight. "Stella, dear, don't call Evan during work hours. He needs absolute focus for his career. Girlfriends who call during work seem needy and unprofessional. You shouldn't ask him for help with things like moving furniture or fixing your car. Strong, independent women handle their own problems without burdening their men. Always call before visiting. We value our privacy here. Dropping by unannounced shows poor upbringing." Each rule felt like a test I was failing before I'd even started. I tried following them perfectly, hoping compliance would earn her acceptance. I needed her to like me because I loved Evan desperately. When I mentioned feeling uncomfortable with his mother's rules, Evan would shrug them off. "Just ignore her. She's always been dramatic. My dad says she was the same way with all my ex-girlfriends. Once she sees how amazing you are, she'll warm up." But I saw something in Veronica's eyes during those family dinners that Evan missed or chose to ignore. There was no drama or theatrical performance, just cold calculation. She meant every word. She was watching me constantly, cataloging every mistake, every social misstep, every moment I didn't measure up to her impossible standards. I was being evaluated and failing every test. The first real threat came 3 months before our wedding. We were at Veronica's house for Sunday dinner. Evan had gone to the kitchen to help his father with dessert, leaving me alone in the hallway outside the bathroom. Veronica appeared silently beside me. She stepped close, invading my space, her expensive perfume overwhelming. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but every word was clear and deliberate. "I know exactly how girls like you operate, Stella. I've seen it before. You come in sweet and innocent, but you're really here to take my son away from his family, to isolate him and ruin him." My heart hammered. "Mrs. Harrison, that's not, I love Evan, I would never. If you push me to intervene, I will do it without hesitation. And when I intervene, you won't like the results. Do you understand me?" Before I could respond, she smiled brightly as Evan rounded the corner. "We were just having the loveliest chat about wedding flowers," she said cheerfully. Later, when I tried to tell Evan what had really happened, he laughed it off. "Mom's just protective. She does this dramatic stuff to test people. It's actually kind of funny if you don't take it seriously. Just be patient with her." But her eyes had been completely serious. That wasn't a test. It was a warning I didn't yet understand how to heed. Our wedding day started perfectly. The church looked beautiful with white roses everywhere. My best friend helped me into my grandmother's lace veil. Evan waited at the altar looking handsome and nervous in his charcoal suit. I walked down the aisle feeling like my dreams were coming true. Evan's eyes filled with tears when he saw me. The ceremony was beautiful, meaningful, everything I'd hoped for. Then the officiant said, "Do you, Evan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Evan's voice rang out clear and strong. "I do." From the front row came a sound like someone dying. Veronica's loud, keening wail filled the church. Not subtle crying, not happy tears. This was theatrical mourning, raw and desperate, like she was watching her son be taken away to execution. She sobbed so loudly the officiant paused mid-sentence. People craned their necks to look at her. Evan's father tried to comfort her, but she shook him off violently and continued wailing. When I spoke my vows, my voice trembling with emotion and confusion, Veronica's sobs grew even louder, drowning out my words. At the reception, she wore a black dress. Not elegant evening black, funeral black, mourning black. She sat at her table dabbing her eyes dramatically while everyone else celebrated. That's when I finally understood with sickening clarity. She wasn't sad about losing a son to marriage. She believed I was stealing something that belonged exclusively to her. The first months of marriage felt like drowning slowly. Evan changed in ways I couldn't have predicted, becoming someone I barely recognized. Every single night before bed, he texted his mother. Long conversations that lasted 30 minutes or more. When I asked what they talked about so extensively every day, he got defensive and snapped that I was being jealous of his relationship with his mother. He asked Veronica's opinion about everything in our lives. What car we should buy, what color to paint our bedroom, whether I should keep my job or work from home, even what meals I should cook. Her preferences always overruled mine without discussion. Whenever Veronica said something cruel to me, which happened increasingly often, Evan immediately defended her. "She didn't mean it that way. You're misinterpreting her. You're being too sensitive again. That's just how she shows love and concern." I started feeling like an unwanted guest in my own marriage. Like I was living in someone else's house, following rules I didn't understand, trying desperately to fit into a space that was never designed to include me. Evan and I stopped connecting. He was always tired or distracted or on the phone. We stopped laughing together, stopped sharing our days, stopped dreaming about our future. I cried alone in our bathroom, more nights than I could count, wondering where my husband had gone. 6 months into marriage, Veronica showed up unannounced at our house. Evan was at work. I was home organizing our closet, trying to make our small space feel more like home. She didn't knock. She used the key Evan had given her without telling me. I heard the front door open and came out to find her standing in our living room, looking around with obvious disapproval. She walked through our home touching everything, running her finger along surfaces checking for dust, opening our kitchen cabinets, looking in our refrigerator, judging every choice we'd made with critical eyes. Then she turned to face me, her expression cold and hard as stone. "You're not good for my son, Stella. I can see it clearly now. You're draining the strength and life from him, making him weak and dependent on you. That's not what a real woman does for her husband. A real woman builds him up." I tried to speak, to defend myself, but she held up her hand to silence me like I was a child. "Leave before I have to take back what rightfully belongs to me. Leave now while you can still do it with some dignity and tact." The words sounded vague and metaphorical, but her tone was razor-sharp with genuine hatred. This wasn't motherly concern. This was pure malice directed at destroying me. After she left, I sat on our couch shaking for an hour. Then I locked myself in the bathroom and cried until I was sick. When Evan came home, I tried explaining what happened. He sighed heavily like I was exhausting him and said his mother was just worried about him. 3 weeks later, I was carrying groceries from my car when Veronica appeared. She must have been waiting for me because she came from the side of our house the moment I pulled into the driveway. She blocked my path to the front door. I stood there holding heavy bags, my arms already aching, while she stepped close enough that I could smell her perfume. Her voice dropped to a whisper, so quiet I had to strain to hear every word. "If you don't leave my son, Stella, I will seize your breath. I will systematically take away every single bit of peace you cling to, every moment of happiness, every feeling of safety and security. I will make it so you cannot breathe in this family or this marriage." The threat wasn't about physical violence. It was something worse. A promise to destroy my life psychologically, emotionally, socially. To take away everything that made life worth living until I had nothing left. I stood frozen, bags cutting into my hands, staring at this perfectly dressed woman who had just threatened to destroy my entire existence. "Do you understand what I'm saying to you?" she asked, her eyes boring into mine. I nodded, unable to speak, my throat closed tight with fear. She smiled then, that cold smile that never reached her eyes, and walked calmly to her car like she'd just discussed the weather. I believed every word, and I knew she was capable of everything she'd promised. That evening, I told Evan everything, every word his mother had said, the threats, the hatred in her voice, the promise to take away my peace and make me unable to breathe. He rolled his eyes dramatically and set down his phone with obvious annoyance. "Stella, come on. You're exaggerating again. My mom doesn't talk like that. You're misinterpreting her concern and making it sound sinister." She said she would seize my breath. Those were her exact words, Evan. She threatened me. "She's just being dramatic in her own way. You know how mothers are about their sons. She's expressing worry. You need to stop being so paranoid about every little thing she says." This wasn't little. She cornered me in our driveway and threatened to destroy my life. Evan looked at me with something that felt like pity mixed with irritation. "Maybe you should talk to someone professional. This level of jealousy and paranoia about my mother isn't normal or healthy. It's concerning." His words felt like a slap across my face. My own husband was suggesting I was mentally unstable for being afraid of his mother's explicit threats. For the first time since our wedding, I felt completely and utterly alone. I had married him thinking we were a team, that we would face problems together as partners. But I was facing everything by myself while he stood firmly on his mother's side. That night, I slept on the couch because I couldn't bear lying beside someone who didn't believe me or protect me. Veronica's campaign against me became methodical and relentless. She worked systematically to destroy my reputation and my marriage from multiple angles simultaneously. She called Evan at work 2 or 3 times a week specifically to complain about my cooking. "That poor boy is probably starving at home. She doesn't know how to properly feed a hardworking man. I'm worried about his health." She told extended family members I was lazy and didn't maintain our home properly. "I visited last week, and you should have seen the state of that house. Dishes in the sink, laundry everywhere. Poor Evan deserves better." She started dropping subtle but poisonous hints that I might be unfaithful. "She goes out during the day a lot, says she's running errands, but who really knows? She's very friendly with other men. Too friendly if you ask my opinion." She showed up at our house constantly unannounced to inspect how I was maintaining her son's home and well-being. She would check if beds were made, if dishes were done, if the bathroom was clean enough. Every visit ended with disappointment and thinly veiled criticism. Slowly, like poison seeping into water, Evan started believing her. He questioned where I went during the day. He criticized meals I'd spent hours preparing. He complained our house was never clean enough even though I spent entire days cleaning. The emotional abuse tightened around my throat like hands slowly choking me, just like Veronica had promised. She was seizing my breath, and no one would help me. That's when Ella reappeared in our lives. She'd been Evan's childhood friend, someone he'd grown up with before she moved away for college. Now she was back in town and immediately reached out to reconnect. Veronica absolutely adored her. She treated Ella with warmth and genuine affection she had never once shown me. She hugged her, complimented her constantly, invited her to every single family gathering and holiday. Ella was undeniably pretty with long dark hair and an easy smile. She seemed sweet and friendly on the surface, but I noticed things that made my stomach turn. She hugged Evan constantly, long, lingering embraces that lasted several seconds too long. She touched his arm whenever she laughed at his jokes, her hand resting there. She sat close beside him at family dinners, their shoulders and thighs touching. I watched the way Ella looked at my husband when she thought no one was watching. With longing and affection, and barely concealed desire that went far beyond childhood friendship. And Evan didn't push her away. He laughed at her jokes. He hugged her back warmly. He seemed lighter and genuinely happier around her than he'd been around me in months. When I tried expressing discomfort with their closeness, Evan got angry and defensive. "She's just a friend. God, Stella, you're so insecure. First you're paranoid about my mother, now you're jealous of my childhood friend. What's wrong with you?" What was wrong was that I could see exactly what was happening, and I was completely powerless to stop it. I slowly realized a painful truth that made me feel sick. I wasn't married to just one person. I was somehow married to 3 people who were working together against me. I was married to Evan, who had never emotionally left his mother's orbit. I was married to Veronica, who controlled every aspect of our lives through her son. And I was married to Ella, who was steadily filling all the emotional gaps that Evan had created between us. Evan stopped talking to me about his day or his feelings, but I heard him on the phone with Ella for hours every week, laughing and sharing stories he never shared with me anymore. Evan stopped planning any dates or quality time with me, but he never missed an opportunity to meet Ella for coffee or lunch or drinks. Evan stopped showing me any physical affection, but I watched him hug Ella warmly every single time they saw each other. Veronica encouraged all of it deliberately. She invited Ella to every family event, but made cutting remarks whenever I attended. She praised Ella constantly while criticizing everything I did or said. I became invisible in my own home and marriage. I would cook dinners no one thanked me for, clean a house no one acknowledged, try starting conversations that died immediately in uncomfortable silence. Some nights I sat across the dinner table from my husband while he texted Ella, and I felt like I'd already disappeared, like I was a ghost haunting my own life. The final breaking point came when I had an important medical appointment. I'd been waiting 3 months to see a specialist about ongoing health issues. The appointment was crucial, and I needed someone to drive me because they might dilate my eyes during the exam. The exact same day, Veronica announced she was having her birthday dinner at an expensive restaurant downtown. She didn't ask if we were available, just sent a text announcing the time and place, expecting us to attend. I explained to Evan that I really needed him to drive me to my medical appointment, that I'd been waiting months for this, that it was important for my health and well-being. He looked uncomfortable and trapped. "Can't you reschedule it? It's my mom's birthday, Stella. She'll be incredibly hurt and angry if we don't show up." "This is a medical appointment with a specialist, Evan. I can't just easily reschedule. I've been waiting 3 months. And it's my mother's birthday. I can't miss that. Can't you take an Uber or ask one of your friends to drive you?" I stared at him in complete disbelief. "You're actually choosing your mother's birthday dinner over my health, over driving your wife to an important medical appointment. Stop being so dramatic about everything. Just get an Uber. It's not a big deal." I broke down right there in our living room. Months of accumulated pain and rejection, and feeling completely invisible came pouring out in racking, desperate sobs. Evan called me dramatic and unstable. Veronica, when she heard, called me selfish and manipulative. And Ella attended that birthday dinner, sitting in the seat that should have been mine, right beside my husband, smiling. Veronica worked systematically and methodically to turn Evan completely against me. She filled his head with poison disguised as loving, motherly concern. "Stella is genuinely bad for your mental health, sweetheart. Look how stressed and unhappy you've been since marrying her. That's not normal or healthy. A wife who truly loves her husband wouldn't try to control and damage his relationship with his own mother. That's manipulative behavior. Stella is isolating you from your family and your real friends. Can't you see what she's doing? It's classic emotional abuse. Ella really understands you on a deep level. She cares about you in ways Stella never has and never will. That's what real love and support looks like. A real wife would fully support her husband's family instead of creating constant drama, problems, and conflict. Every single conversation Evan had with his mother chipped away at our marriage like water eroding stone. Every phone call reinforced the narrative that I was the villain, the problem, the source of all unhappiness. Evan started actively pushing me aside in ways that accumulated into massive rejection. He stopped asking my opinion about anything. He made major financial decisions without consulting me. He spent less and less time at home, always finding excuses to be elsewhere. When I tried talking about our marriage falling apart, he told me I was being negative and creating problems. When I desperately suggested couples counseling, he said I was the only one who needed professional help. I felt like I was drowning in plain sight, while my husband stood on the shore refusing to help. At a large family gathering with about 30 relatives, Veronica delivered her most devastating public humiliation yet. We'd just finished dinner. Everyone was relaxed in the living room, talking and laughing. Veronica stood up holding her wine glass like she was about to make a toast. The room fell silent. "You know," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear clearly, "some women marry into families above their station and just can't handle the pressure and expectations. Some women simply can't keep a proper home, no matter how much support and guidance they receive. And some women just can't satisfy their husbands the way a real woman should be able to." She looked directly at me as she spoke. 30 pairs of eyes followed her gaze and turned to stare at me with pity, judgment, and barely suppressed amusement. Someone laughed nervously. Then another person chuckled uncomfortably. Soon, quiet laughter rippled through the room while I sat there with burning cheeks and tears threatening to spill over. I looked desperately at Evan, silently begging him to defend me, to say something, to stand up for his wife in front of his family. He stared at his plate in cowardly silence. My heart physically broke in that moment, actually shattered into sharp pieces inside my chest. The man who had promised to love and protect me sat there saying nothing while his mother publicly humiliated and degraded me in front of everyone we knew. After that nightmare evening, Evan became even more distant and cold. He stopped coming home at reasonable hours. He texted saying he was working late. But I could hear restaurant noise and music in the background when he occasionally called. He stopped talking to me about anything real or meaningful. Our conversations became purely transactional. "What's for dinner tonight? Did you remember to pay the electric bill? I'll be home late again, don't wait up." He started obviously hiding his phone from me, angling the screen away when he texted, taking phone calls in other rooms with the door closed, setting it face down on every surface. My instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong. One night while he was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I looked at the notification before I could stop myself, before guilt could override desperate need to know. "Ella, I wish you were the one I married instead. You deserve so much better than what you have at home. You deserve real love." My hands physically trembled as I read those words. Then I scrolled up through their conversation history, seeing months of messages I'd never known existed. Intimate conversations, detailed complaints about me, plans to meet up secretly, emotional intimacy that should have been exclusively mine. I sat on the bed, holding his phone, watching my marriage die in real time through text messages between my husband and another woman. When Evan came out wrapped in a towel, he saw his phone in my hands. His face went completely pale. "It's not what it looks like," he said immediately, automatically. But we both knew exactly what it looked like. The next afternoon, Veronica appeared at our house. I don't know how she knew I'd discovered the messages, but somehow she did. Maybe Evan had called her immediately, seeking comfort and guidance like he always did. She walked into my house without knocking, like she owned it, and I was just a temporary tenant. I was sitting at the kitchen table, numb and hollow from crying all night until I had no tears left. She stood over me, her shadow falling across the table, and delivered what she clearly intended as her final, crushing blow. "Leave him," she said simply, bluntly. "You were never meant for my son. You were never good enough for him or this family. I tried to tell you gently at first, but you wouldn't listen. So now I'm telling you directly and clearly. Leave my son before you destroy him completely with your presence." I looked up at her with swollen, red eyes. "I love him." Love isn't enough when you're fundamentally the wrong person. Ella is right for him. She always has been. She understands our family. She fits with us naturally in ways you never could and never will. You've been orchestrating this from the very beginning, I said, realization washing over me like cold water. You've been deliberately pushing them together while destroying me. Veronica smiled that cold, triumphant smile I'd come to know so well. I told you I would take back what belongs to me. I warned you I would seize your breath. You should have listened and left when I gave you the chance. She turned to leave, pausing dramatically at the door. Look at your life now, Stella. Can you even breathe anymore? I've taken everything, just like I promised I would. After she left, I sat trembling at that table, but something inside me had fundamentally shifted. I refused to cry anymore. 2 days later, I collapsed at work. My supervisor found me on the bathroom floor, hyperventilating uncontrollably and unable to stand on my own. She called an ambulance while I gasped for air that wouldn't come. At the emergency room, doctors ran extensive tests and found nothing physically wrong with my heart or lungs. But they immediately recognized what was happening to me. Severe emotional exhaustion, acute panic disorder triggered by prolonged, intense psychological stress and trauma. Your body is literally shutting down from stress, the doctor explained with genuine concern. You need to remove yourself immediately from whatever situation is causing this level of severe anxiety. Your mental health is in serious crisis. I called Evan from the hospital bed, expecting him to rush to my side, to finally see how much I was suffering, to realize how badly I needed help. He didn't come. When I called again an hour later, confused and hurt, Veronica answered his phone. Her voice was cold and satisfied. Evan is too emotionally upset to come to the hospital right now. You've caused him so much stress and pain that he can't handle seeing you. He's with Ella. She's comforting him through this difficult time that you've created. I hung up and stared at the sterile hospital ceiling, finally understanding the complete scope of my situation with devastating clarity. I was fighting this war entirely alone. Evan was already gone, had been gone for months. Veronica had already won completely, and Ella was already positioned perfectly to take my place. But lying in that hospital bed with monitors beeping around me, something crystallized deep inside me. I wasn't as weak as they all thought. I spent 2 full days in the hospital recovering and thinking. Clear, rational thinking without Evan's voice or Veronica's manipulation clouding everything. I realized several painful but necessary truths. My husband had never truly chosen me. He'd married me while remaining emotionally married to his mother. I'd been fighting for a position that was already permanently filled by someone else. Veronica wasn't protecting her son from a bad wife. She was controlling and owning him, refusing to let him become his own independent person. I had threatened that control simply by existing. Ella wasn't an innocent childhood friend caught in the middle. She'd been working with Veronica from the beginning, positioned perfectly to slide seamlessly into my place once I was removed. The entire game had been rigged from the start. I'd been set up to fail no matter what I did. But I also realized something powerful. I had something they didn't know about and couldn't take away, the power to walk away, the power to refuse to play their rigged game anymore, the power to finally save myself. I wasn't going to beg Evan to love me. I wasn't going to fight Veronica for my place in a family that would never accept me. I wasn't going to compete with Ella for a man who had already chosen her. I was going to quietly, methodically, carefully plan my exit, and I was going to do it exactly right. I left the hospital with a clear plan forming in my mind. I immediately contacted a divorce lawyer that a trusted friend recommended. I started systematically gathering evidence of the emotional abuse I'd suffered. I took photos every time Veronica showed up at our house unannounced. I saved text messages showing Evan's neglect and Ella's inappropriate relationship with my husband. I wrote detailed notes with dates and specifics of every threat Veronica had made. I started secretly recording conversations, keeping my phone in my pocket when Veronica came over to continue her campaign of psychological destruction. I opened a separate bank account at a completely different bank and started transferring small amounts of money each week. Not stealing anything, just protecting what was rightfully mine. I found a small apartment I could afford on just my salary. I researched furniture prices. I calculated exactly what I'd need to survive independently. I planned my escape like a detailed military operation. And through all of this preparation, I stopped arguing with Evan entirely. I stopped trying desperately to make him see reason or truth. I stopped crying over his betrayal. I just became very, very quiet and still. Evan interpreted my silence as defeat or depression. Veronica thought she had finally broken me completely. Ella probably thought I was already mentally gone. None of them had any idea I was preparing the biggest, most important move of my entire life. 3 weeks after leaving the hospital, I calmly told Evan I was leaving, not asking permission, not discussing possibilities, just informing him of my decision. He was watching television when I walked in carrying a packed suitcase. "I'm filing for divorce," I said simply, my voice steady and clear. "I've already retained a lawyer. You'll receive official papers within the week." Evan's face went completely white. He jumped up from the couch, suddenly panicked and desperate. "What? No, Stella, wait, we can fix this. I promise we can work this out." "There's nothing to fix, Evan. You made your choice months ago. Now I'm making mine." Within an hour, Veronica burst through our door, her face red with rage. Evan must have called her immediately, just like he always did. "You ungrateful, selfish girl," she screamed at me. "After everything we've done for you, after we welcomed you into this family with open arms, you think you can just walk out." I looked at her calmly, no longer afraid of her threats or her anger. "I don't belong anywhere I can't breathe freely. You promised to seize my breath, Veronica. Congratulations, you did it, but now I'm taking it back." For the first time since I'd met her, Veronica was completely speechless. She stood there staring at me like I'd transformed into someone she didn't recognize. Ella showed up shortly after, pretending to be shocked and deeply concerned. "Stella, please don't do anything rash or impulsive. Think about what this will do to Evan." "I've thought about Evan constantly for 2 years," I said. "Now I'm thinking about myself and my own survival." Evan spent the next several days desperately begging me to stay, calling constantly, texting every hour, showing up at my workplace, making promises he should have made 2 years ago when they might have mattered. "I'll fix everything, I absolutely swear. I'll talk seriously to my mom about boundaries. I'll cut off all contact with Ella. I'll go to couples counseling with you. Just please give me one more chance." But I had heard versions of these promises before in smaller ways. And I had learned through bitter experience that Evan's promises meant absolutely nothing when it came to choosing between me and his mother. "I don't believe you anymore," I told him honestly, looking directly into his eyes. "And even if you genuinely tried, you would never fully choose me. Not completely, not freely. Your mother owns you emotionally, and she always will." "That's not true. I love you. When I was in the hospital unable to breathe, you didn't come. You stayed with Ella because your mother told you to. That's everything I need to know about where I stand." I saw the realization cross his face. He knew I was right. He had failed me in the most fundamental way a husband could fail his wife, and there was no coming back from that kind of betrayal. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, tears finally filling his eyes. "I'm so sorry for everything." "I'm sorry too," I said quietly. "Sorry I wasted 2 years of my life loving someone who was never actually available to be loved back." I walked away then, and I didn't look back, not even once. The divorce was surprisingly quick. Evan didn't fight me on anything. Maybe guilt motivated his cooperation, or maybe Veronica told him to let me go quietly to avoid a messy court battle that might expose her manipulation publicly. I moved into my small apartment. It was quiet and simple and completely, wonderfully mine. No one showed up unannounced. No one criticized my cooking or cleaning. No one whispered threats in hallways or invaded my space. I started therapy to process everything I'd been through. My therapist helped me understand that I had been trapped in an emotionally abusive situation, that gaslighting and systematic manipulation had made me doubt my own reality and sanity. I learned that healthy relationships shouldn't make you feel like you're constantly suffocating. That real love doesn't require you to become smaller and smaller to fit into someone else's rigid expectations. I found my voice again slowly, started speaking up for myself, started setting firm boundaries, started remembering who I actually was before Evan and Veronica had tried systematically to erase me. At night, I slept peacefully for the first time in 2 years. No anxiety, no fear, no walking on eggshells, just quiet, blessed, beautiful peace. Veronica tried calling repeatedly. I blocked her number. Evan sent long, emotional texts. I didn't respond to any of them. Ella posted cryptic quotes about karma. I unfollowed her completely. I ignored them all and focused entirely on healing myself. 6 months after our divorce finalized, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Evan and Ella had started dating officially. They made it public on social media almost immediately, which confirmed the relationship had been happening long before I left. I felt a small ache, but mostly overwhelming relief. Relief that I wasn't the crazy, paranoid, jealous wife I'd been systematically made to feel like. Relief that my instincts had been completely right all along. Then, about 3 months into their relationship, something happened that didn't surprise me at all but still felt validating. Veronica turned on Ella with the exact same viciousness. Suddenly, Ella wasn't cooking properly, wasn't cleaning to Veronica's standards, wasn't dressing appropriately, wasn't giving Evan enough space to breathe, was too clingy, too demanding, too emotional, too dramatic. The exact same destructive campaign Veronica had run against me, she was now running against Ella with identical tactics. Because the problem had never been me or Ella specifically. The problem was Veronica's pathological need to completely control her son, and any woman who threatened that control automatically became the enemy. Late one night, Evan called me, his voice broken and desperate. "You were right about everything, about my mother, about what she does to people. I'm so sorry, Stella. I destroyed our marriage for absolutely nothing." "You destroyed our marriage for your mother's approval," I corrected gently but firmly. "And you still haven't learned that you'll never fully have it. She'll never be satisfied." "Can we talk? Can I please see you?" "No, Evan. That chapter of my life is permanently closed. I hope you figure things out eventually, but it won't be with me." I hung up and didn't answer when he called back repeatedly. A full year after leaving Evan, I stood in my apartment with windows wide open, breathing deeply. Fresh, clean air filled my lungs completely, unrestricted and free. I had started dating someone new, someone genuinely kind who didn't come with toxic family baggage, someone who chose me clearly every single day without hesitation or reservation. I'd been promoted at work. My supervisor valued my skills and recognized my dedication. My coworkers respected and genuinely liked me. I had real friends now, people who supported and believed me, people who didn't make me feel crazy for having normal feelings and reactions. I looked at old photos of myself from my marriage and barely recognized that frightened woman. She looked exhausted and small and scared, like she was trying desperately to disappear and take up no space. The woman looking back at me from the mirror now was completely different, stronger, clearer, more authentically herself than she'd been in years. I thought about Veronica's threat that had haunted me for so long. "I will seize your breath." She had tried so hard, and for a terrible time, she had succeeded. She had made it impossible for me to breathe in that family, in that marriage, in that suffocating life. But she hadn't destroyed me. She had just inadvertently taught me something valuable about my own strength. Sometimes the people who try hardest to take your breath away are actually teaching you how to breathe completely on your own. I eventually heard through Evan's brother that Ella left him too, that she couldn't handle Veronica's constant interference and vicious criticism, that she realized exactly what I had realized. Evan would never choose a partner over his mother. I heard that Evan was single again, living with Veronica in his childhood home, back in his old bedroom like he'd never really left. Back where she could control every single aspect of his life without any interference. Part of me genuinely felt sad for him. He would probably never experience real love or true partnership. He would never know what it felt like to be chosen freely and completely by someone. He would spend his entire life trying desperately to earn approval from someone who would never fully give it. But mostly, I felt grateful beyond words. Grateful that I had escaped. Grateful that I had found the strength to save myself. Grateful that I hadn't wasted any more precious years trying to win a game specifically designed for me to lose. I stood in my sunny apartment with afternoon light streaming through open windows and whispered words that felt like a prayer, a promise, a hard-won victory. You didn't seize my breath, Veronica. You just helped me learn to breathe on my own. And for the first time in 3 years, I took a deep, full breath. My lungs expanded completely. My chest felt light and free and unburdened. I was no longer suffocating in someone else's impossible expectations. I was breathing my own air, living my own authentic life, choosing my own future. The villains of my story remained trapped in the chaos they had created, but I was finally, beautifully free.